And then the party host, quasi-perfectionist party host. So people come over. Okay, so I've got everything all ready. The sink is completely clear of anything on the counter except unless I'm using it for my food display. There are no dirty dishes in the sink. I've made sure all of that is done and gone before my guests arrive. And then people start to arrive. And what if I've planned out my menu, and what's happening in the oven? Maybe I'm heating some things up, and then somebody arrives with something extra that isn't needed in my menu. Or what's even worse, and this happened, someone arrives with something that needs to be heated up, and I don't have space in my oven or its immediate schedule for that item. So I'm seething inside at this person who dared to be nice enough to bring something to add to
Yeah.
to the menu.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become their favorite versions of themselves and to strive for overall health by healing their relationship to food and exercise, healing their relationship to their body, and most importantly, healing their relationship to themselves, all without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who have been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time someone shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast.
Well, welcome to the Unveiling the Beast podcast. Listeners, I have Vicki Paris Goodman with me today, and thanks for saying yes to this show.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Of course. Can you tell me and the listeners a little bit about who you are and why you think you are who you are?
Oh, why I think it. Okay. All right. I'll try and keep that short because, a lot of stuff happens in childhood. We could go through the whole thing. No, we're not going to do that. Okay, so I'm an author now, but I was a mechanical engineer in my career, and then later on I switched careers and became a real property appraiser. I was on the side a theater reviewer for over 20 years in Long Beach, California, for a local paper. I'm a semi-professional violinist and I'm a singer. So I've done a few things, and it's been quite a ride. But who I am is type A personality. I'll admit it right up front. I'm impatient or have been. I've been working on it and I've made some strides, but not enough. Compulsive in some ways, kind of a control freak. I'm a neat freak, but not a clean freak, interestingly enough, just a neat freak. Yeah. And I think it comes from my childhood. I think my mom attempted, maybe for self-validation, to make me kind of a clone of herself in terms of opinions and judgments. So, by the time I came of age, I had no idea who I was. Back in those days, they'd talk about identity crises. It was kind of a term bandied about, but I was actually having one. I had no idea who I was. So I think maybe the type A came from, my attempts to grasp for control of anything I could in my life. And later I conquered the mom being a clone of my mother thing, but not until much later. Probably I was around 40 years old when I finally got out of that and saw, oh, there's a personality there and kind of a funny one in some areas. So, I was happy with that. So that's who I am.
Awesome. A
Yeah.
question for the listeners. I know that there's like different versions of the type A, type B, type XYZ personalities, but a lot of people are familiar with A and B. But for those who aren't, can you kind of tell the listeners like kind of what their personality traits are in the A and B?
Yeah, in fact, in the preface of my book, Speed Bumps, I go into some detail on this, but basically, the type A is controlling in many ways. And there's some variation, of course, and I don't think anybody is a pure type A or a pure type B, although I think I come close on the pure type A thing. Um, Impatience is an unfortunate trait of the type A. um we like to control, so we don't, like in a work environment, we don't necessarily feel comfortable with team projects or delegation, because we kind of live our lives with the mantra, if it's to be, it's up to me. So
Mm.
that's tough. And there are some kind of obsessive compulsive characteristics too. Like I was a clean freak, not a clean freak, a neat freak. My
Mhm.
bedroom was always just so. And it had to be that way, or I'd get a little anxious, when I was a child. And the last chapter in my book is entitled Road Rage 101, just to give you an idea. And I'm not talking about road rage from the standpoint of threatening the safety or well-being of another driver.
Mm.
That impatient type of driving where everybody is an obstacle to get around. So these are some of the things, I'm sure I've left some things out, but these are some of the things that define most type A's. The type B, on the other hand, are those sort of centered individuals, grounded individuals that we all need. They're very comfortable to be around. They work at one speed regardless of deadlines. Um, and you know, I I really think that type A's and type B's benefit each other in various ways
Mm.
too. So yeah, so the type B's are those grounded souls that are relaxed in almost every situation, regardless of the stress potential.
Mm. A question did come up for me about type A, and I don't know if you know the answer or the psychology behind it, but does the control come from some sort of perfectionism?
Oh, thank you. Yes, perfectionism is another
Okay.
attribute of the type A. Yeah, I was a definite perfectionist, and I probably still am. Um, yeah, I think all of those things amount to control in different
Mm.
ways. The compulsions, the neat freak thing, the perfectionism, which kind of goes along with neatness. Um, yeah, they're all type A proclivities for sure.
Mm. Yeah, I was just thinking those two terms could possibly be used interchangeably a lot. Um, but I wonder if the perfectionism stems from the control or the control stems from the perfectionism, or if it's like a chicken and egg situation.
Not being a psychology professional, I can't really say, and I can't really say if the type A in most people is genetically based,
Hmm.
or if there are circumstances like the one I described with my mother that caused it, or maybe some of each. Maybe you have to have um, that genetic component in order for a full-on type A profile to emerge. And then in order to activate it, you have to have these things happen in childhood that
Yeah.
make you grasp for control. I don't know. And that's what's interesting about my book too, Katie, Speed Bumps, is that, not being a psychology professional, I wrote the only book that I know of that's written strictly from the experience of a type A, in this case, my own experience, because I can't properly analyze the personality type, if I haven't been trained or schooled in psychology, and I haven't been. So I wrote it strictly from my own experience.
Mm. Are you open and willing to share with the listeners some or all? Well, we don't want to give the whole book away, right? But are you open and willing to share at least parts of your story and
Of
overcoming what
course.
you overcame and what the book is based on?
I am an open book, no pun intended. I am. I will tell you anything you want to know. Um, I talk about my childhood, and in some ways, some of these things probably aren't necessarily relevant, but I thought in order to move on and really describe my type A personality excesses, I needed to go into some depth with some really fun to read stories about my childhood. So I have a chapter 2 is called Bad Hair Days. Obviously I have curly hair, which is fine now. Yeah, you do.
I'm having a bad hair day today. That's perfect.
So funny. But you know how it is in childhood
Yeah.
when, you don't have straight hair like everybody else. You just want to fit in, when you're 6 years old or 8 or 11 or, even 14. And you don't fit in with curly hair, or at least
Mm,
back when I went to school, you didn't. And I didn't see the merits in being different. I just wanted to fit in. Um, One of the most type A chapters in the book is on quasi perfectionism. It's actually on perfectionism, but there are reasons that are kind of funny why I chose to call it quasi perfectionism, because I like to make myself less extreme whenever possible. So I thought adding that prefix quasi, would help me to be less extreme. And I explain it in the book. And this chapter goes into all of the there's a section on pet peeves, like those ice cream wrappers that are glued on with some sort of edible adhesive onto the ice cream cone that they give you,
mhm.
at the ice cream store, and how I hate those things because, I always take them off the minute they deliver my cone to me, because I don't want to do it once I get down to the cone and want to eat the cone, then my
Yeah.
enjoyment of the treat is interrupted, so there's
Yeah.
some ridiculous things. Um,
Can I speak on that real
oh,
quick?
huh?
Can I speak on that real quick? The
Oh,
pet peeves.
sure. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
I was just thinking, like, I wonder if I'm also a recovering perfectionist, and I'm wondering if our pet peeves like just jab into us a little bit more than the person who's not a perfectionist. Like one of my pet peeves is the toilet paper has to be on the roll the correct way, or it drives me nuts. And that's still today. Like I don't think I'll ever get over that. But I'm wondering, um, it's just a thought that I had. Like I wonder if the pet peeves for the perfectionist is more intense in our brains than for the average Joe. I don't know. Just a thought.
Absolutely. It has to be. How else could it be, Katie? I mean, the type B, the relaxed type B, though they may get annoyed once in a while, they're just not going to react with the intensity that we do as type A's.
Mm,
I noticed it in my husband, who was, type B minus. He was so type B. He was so relaxed in every situation. Oh, that's an interesting story too. This is a story that will tell you how a type B might react to the bad behavior of a type A. So I'm on the phone with a major wireless company because of a billing issue that they don't straighten out month after month after month. Every month the bill comes, I come home from work, and my husband Sam is crossing his fingers that it's been corrected this time, because he hears me over the phone for 45 minutes each time it's not corrected, getting more and more frustrated. So I get this unfortunate soul on the phone, like month 14, that it
mm.
still hasn't been corrected. Yes, well over a year. And and when I get off the phone, Sam says, "Sweetie, you can't talk to people like that." And I say, "I just did," and with my snark. And he repeats once again, "Sweetie, you can't talk to people like that." And it wasn't that I was cursing them or using any dirty words or anything, but I was visibly very frustrated, and I let them know it. And so
Mhm.
this is what he was reacting to. I wasn't cursing them out or anything. I don't
Right.
do that. But yeah, the person was the unfortunate one to get my call because I'd had it with spending 45 minutes, once a month trying to get this thing corrected, so here I am making excuses for the behavior. Anyway, yeah. So that's the type B that really doesn't understand why I got as worked up as I did, you
Mm.
know. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
So, out of curiosity, what inspired the, I want to say healing? Because I'm guessing the book is your story of overcoming and healing. Like, was there a catalyst to your change and or to writing the book?
Well, it's funny that you would assume that I changed because I'm still really grappling with it. Now, one
Mm,
thing I came up with, and I'm pretty proud of myself for acknowledging this because it doesn't put me in the best light. I realize that the reason I'm having a much easier time now with the impatience is, in other words, I'm not as impatient as I was, is because Sam and I, some years ago, about 9 years ago, moved to a small town in Arizona from Southern California for retirement. And in a small town, things are a lot more relaxed. You don't have the traffic, you don't have the distances that you have to get to go someplace.
mm,
People tend to be more relaxed. And it's just an environment. I describe it in the book. It's an environment where there are, how did I put it? Fewer the frustrations are fewer and
mm,
farther between. So instead of building on the frustrations, you get a chance to come down from a frustration before the next one hits. And if somebody had told me and convinced me that this would be the case, maybe we would have moved away from Los Angeles years earlier. Instead, I was faced with, stressful work environment, stressful commutes, and the kind of thing I just described talking to the cell phone company. This
yeah.
was, all of these frustrations in life kind of building on each other before any of them had a chance to subside. So that, I was becoming sort of a volcano of frustration that
Yeah.
was bound to, erupt every so often. And so moving to the mountains of central Arizona, I at first I was telling myself, Vicki, you've done a really good job with conquering your impatience. You fall back every once in a while, but for the most part, you've been the picture of good behavior. And then I thought, it's not so much me. It really is the environment.
Mm. That's big. And I want to point this out for the listeners because I hate this label, but it's what I've been labeling myself. I'm a holistic health coach, and I don't know why I don't like the label. We can get into that later, but I focus on more than just what you put in your mouth and how you move your body. I focus on things like how much sleep are you getting? What what kinds of foods are you eating? How are you moving your body? Are you pampering yourself and de-stressing? Are you decluttering the spaces around you? And I mention this because I love that you brought up, it's funny that I assumed that you changed because I also teach that like the decluttering your spaces is that can extend into decluttering the environment around you and taking who you are and being okay with it and and um putting yourself into a space that nurtures who you are rather than uh what do I want to say? Rather than like fuels the fire. Does that make sense? And so I
Yes.
just wanted to point that out because you're painting this beautiful picture of decluttering the beast, which is what I call it, declutter the beast. So yeah,
Well, see,
environment.
I've been a neat freak my whole life, so I've never lived in clutter. And I describe that in detail too in the
Mm,
book in kind of a funny way, self-deprecating way. There are self-deprecating parts of this book. I had fun with it. And I thought, why are you so self-deprecating? I asked myself. And I thought, it's because of the guilt over some of my behaviors over the years.
Mm.
And I'm not saying I behave badly. I have friends who love me. My coworkers loved me. The people, when I became a supervisor at work, the people who worked for me loved me. It wasn't that I was, this constant uh, personification of bad behavior. I'm
Right.
talking about intermittent behaviors from frustrations that just got too much for me to handle any other way. And I'm not
Yeah.
proud of it, but it's who I am. So I think that, the guilt had a lot to
Mm.
do with the self-deprecation. You notice type Bs are never self-deprecating, you know? And so I'm thinking, well, they don't need to be because they never behave badly. So I think it alleviates the guilt
Yeah.
to to just be honest and direct about some of the things I'm not proud of in my life. For whatever that's worth.
Yeah. I recently put up a post. I'm trying to remember. It was a quote that I put up, but it was something like when you're diving into personal development, we have to be willing to embrace the parts of us that we don't like, as well as the parts that we like, because like just the awareness that those parts of us exist, it doesn't mean you have to change it, but at least the awareness is there, right? And you can
Of
choose, it
course.
puts us at choice of whether we want to change it or not. Some people are like, I like, I like being a clean freak, right? Which I was very much a clean freak until I had a baby and he became a toddler. So, but that's another story for another day.
Good for you for setting that aside, at least temporarily.
Yeah.
Oh, I was talking about the chapter on quasi-perfectionism. I
Hmm.
also go into some funny parts, not just the pet peeves, but like the quasi-perfectionist reader, or the quasi-perfectionist writer, or the quasi-perfectionist party giver, party host, I think is what I called it. Or where, for example, the quasi-perfectionist reader. I go into this crazy story about how my husband Sam could read parts of a book and say he'd read it, or even just skim the book for half an hour and say he'd read it. And I thought, oh my God, I couldn't do that. What if somebody asked me a question about a part I hadn't read? Or what if I missed the main point of the book by doing that? Or, all this other stuff. And, he had no qualms about it. And I thought, that's unconscionable. I could never do that in a million years. Or the quasi-perfectionist writer. Um, we've accepted, I think most of us have accepted that the proper way to write is just to get all the thoughts down and perfect it later, and then there's maybe a first draft and a second draft and all that. I can't write that way. What of all the errors that, in that initial what do they call it? Session where you're just throwing things out there.
Brain
Um,
dump. I call it brain dump.
brainstorming.
Yeah,
Yeah,
brainstorming.
that brainstorming session. What of all the errors, in grammar and spelling and the typos and all that? Oh my God, I couldn't live with it. I can't write that way. So what
Hmm.
I do is I write more slowly, and I might make some notes if I come up with something that I think I might forget, but that's important. And I'll say, okay, I'll add that later. But in the meantime, I'm just writing, and then my finished product is pretty close to what it will eventually be. There are only tweaks here and there. Maybe I'll think of some paragraphs or chapters to add later, but for the most part, it's done. And that's the way I write, and it's virtually unaccepted, out there, but it works for me, and then
Yeah. That's the most important piece though,
right.
that it works for you.
Exactly. And then the party host, quasi-perfectionist party host. So people come over. Okay, so I've got everything all ready. The sink is completely clear of anything on the counter except unless I'm using it for my food display. There are no dirty dishes in the sink. I made sure all of that is done and gone before my guests arrive. And then people start to arrive. And what if I've planned out my menu, and what's happening in the oven? Maybe I'm heating some things up, and then somebody arrives with something extra that isn't needed in my menu. Or what's even worse, and this happened, someone arrives with something that needs to be heated up, and I don't have space in my oven or its immediate schedule for that item. Well, so I'm seething inside at this person who dared to be nice enough to bring something to add to the,
Yeah.
to the menu. Everybody's coming in with things that they're putting all over the floor or the countertops, coolers or jackets and purses and all this stuff. And I throw everything in the pantry so it's out of sight for the time being. Or if it's jackets and purses, they go, on the bed in the bedroom. And then I talk about my type B friends who have this more, the more the merrier attitude toward extra people, extra food, doesn't matter. And why doesn't it matter? Because it just doesn't. And so now I've really lightened up. And this I do credit myself for the change. I've seen the way they put on perfectly good parties, just like I do, and they don't pay attention to this stuff. No one cares.
Mm.
And I realized no one cares if it looks perfect or not. So there you have it. So, and there's more to that chapter too. That's one of my favorite chapters in the book. What else? Oh,
Oh, I wanted to ask you about
yeah.
quasi movie series watcher.
Oh, what would that be?
So
Define that,
like
Katie.
I cannot watch a sequel to a movie if I haven't watched the first one. Absolutely not. It is out of the question. No, just it's okay. It's a good. I don't care. I haven't seen the first one. Let me watch the first one first, and then I'll watch the second one.
Okay. All right. Listen to this. Oh, this is so good. I wish I'd talked to you actually before I published the book. Maybe I would have included that. And something else you mentioned earlier that I can't remember what it was now. Okay. So I had always wanted to see Downton Abbey, but I didn't watch it from the beginning. And so I never watched it. And then sometime during COVID, like I think it was in 2020, I got some kind of an email saying that PBS was going to be doing over a holiday weekend, sort of a marathon of Downton Abbey start to finish. And I thought, "Oh, this is my chance." And it's during COVID. I have nothing to do anyway. So I watched this thing. Well, I knew I had to sleep at night and they were doing this around the clock. So I started watching it, and then my DVR was filling up as I was watching it. I was deleting episodes, but then I had to sleep. So I watched as much as I could and hoped that my DVR wouldn't fill up overnight. And then as soon as I got up, I was watching. So that's kind of off the subject, but I was so meticulous about this so that I didn't miss anything. And I watched the whole thing start to finish. And then I thought, oh, wasn't there a movie? So then I subscribed for a day to, where I could get the movie. So and then I watched the movie. So I've seen everything Downton Abbey, up to this point, but I refused to watch it while it was in production because I hadn't seen the beginning and there was no way that I could find to watch it.
Mm,
So yes, I know
yeah,
exactly what you're talking about and I've lived it.
yeah. And it's funny too because there are sequels that have nothing to do with the prequels, but no.
Oh,
Nope.
oh, I see. Yeah, you were talking sequels.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it works for TV shows too. I wouldn't watch Lost from from the middle because then I'd be more lost than everyone already was.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I don't watch much TV. So far I haven't had much time. And so these series that everybody is streaming and watching, I haven't seen any of them.
Mm.
So I don't, I haven't heard of the one you just mentioned, but
Oh,
that's
it's
just
okay. It's
me.
old anyway. I don't watch TV anymore. Lost was 2004 to 2000 something. But it was only 6 seasons. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, it was called Lost for a reason. Because people got lost in the storyline.
Were
Uh,
they lost physically or were they lost sort of
yeah, they were
mentally?
lost. They were lost on an island that had weird stuff happening, and they would like jump in future, and then they jump into the past, and it's definitely like if I tried to watch that show when it was on TV, I probably couldn't have handled it, but once it got onto Netflix and we could watch episode after episode after episode. Um, it's been still my all-time favorite show. And I've
Lost,
seen it
huh?
4 times. All
To
6
check it
seasons.
out.
Yeah, it's pretty good, but you do get lost, especially the first time you watch it. And they do answer things, but you have to pay close attention because it'll answer like something weird happens in season 1 and they'll answer it in season 6. Why the thing in season
Oh,
1. Yeah,
oh
so
my gosh.
yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
I went off on a lost rant.
Oh, I think tangents are fun.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah. So the book has helped me to get my story out there so that I can kind of heal, like as you said,
Yeah.
from yeah, yeah.
Well, where can people find the book?
Vicki Paris Goodman.com. That's Vicki, Vicki, Paris, like the city in France, Goodman.com. And those are right now, I believe, the best places to get them. Um, you can get them on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, but I have them discounted at my website. So those are the best places to get speed bumps. And also my prior book, To Sam with Love, the book about what happened to me, all the unexpected things that happened for me after my husband Sam passed in 2019.
Mm.
Yeah, I thought the story would help other people. So 2 years after his passing, I wrote that book. It's called To Sam with Love, a surviving spouse's story of inspired grief.
Mm.
So yeah, and it's actually a very uplifting book. People have said, I thought this was going to be depressing, but it's not. So yeah, that's a good one too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more question for you, and I ask everybody at the end of every episode, and that is, I started asking differently, but it's the same question. If everybody on Earth stopped what they were doing and looked at you and said, "Please give me some advice," what would you say?
Always put the truth first. And what I mean by truth is facts. It's not always easy to get to the facts these days, but start vetting your sources and find out who's not being honest with you and who is, and put facts first.
I love that. Beautiful Beasts, Vicki Paris Goodman signing off. Until next time.